Hi. Well, I don't often do videos at this time of night, and I don't often do videos that I know before I upload them, I'm going to disable comments on them. So, the sporting world and the world in general seems to be all caught up with this kneeling for the flag thing. And I only mention it here because it's everywhere. And I have an opinion on it, but I'm Canadian. So that automatically means I'm some crazy socialist, Nazi, communist, whatever, right? Here's the thing. While everybody's yelling about what's right or what's wrong in all this, the actual reason for the fight, the reason for the protest is lost. And this is where the players who are doing the kneeling have lost me. Because now all that we're talking about is players who are kneeling during a football game, and we're not talking about people who are getting shot by the police when they're not armed. And that police officers shooting unarmed people who haven't done anything to threaten them are getting off without charges in some cases. In other cases, charges are brought and then dropped. You may get it to a grand jury and it's dropped at that point. All of that is being forgotten because of a protest. And the comments range from they should be fired. It's an anthem. It's not during the game. If they were doing it during the game, absolutely. To I'm never going to watch that again. That's a lie. I've listened to hockey fans for years. Every time there's a lockout, say I'm not going back. I'm tired. They're greedy. It's millionaires and billionaires, and we're done. We're not going to support it anymore. And as soon as it comes back, everybody supports it. Ratings may be down for the NFL, but ratings are down for everything across the board on television. I've watched as wrestling ratings have dropped to the ground. Wrestling, TV, any series, there's been a drop in viewership. Because of online streaming, because of various other choices people have, even sports are feeling the pinch. I don't think there's any less people watching football. Believe me, on Sundays, Facebook is completely football. But now it's football, and these players have the nerve to say something. The other thing that gets me is when people say, well, they're millionaires, so they should shut up. Okay. So if you come from a crappy neighborhood and you know that there are people that are still there and they're going through all this crap and they're trying to be heard, but they can't be heard because nobody's listening to them, but people will listen to you because of your stature, and you do this, aren't you doing what you can to try to help those that nobody's paying any attention to? No. And I get the military aspect. That the thing is, isn't the reason to fight in a war so that people have the freedom to protest? It's not a freedom to just be what everybody else is. It's a freedom to be different. It's a freedom to have different ideas. It's a freedom to protest. Countries where you're not allowed to protest, where you get fired for protesting, where your life's destroyed for protesting, those are socialist countries. Those are authoritarian countries. Those are countries that I really hope the States doesn't aspire to become. Because here's the thing. Right now it's kneeling during flag. So let's just say that, let's just go crazy. Congress comes back in October, November, and says, you know what, we're just going to make this illegal. You can't do anything during the anthem except sing it and stand there. And it'll be a citation of some sort for any kind of disrespect. All of a sudden, different things can qualify as disrespect. Somebody can't stand up because, they're not feeling well or whatever. Disrespect, citation. And then people will say, "Oh, well, you don't want to put that person in the spotlight because that wasn't their fault." Okay. But then what other freedoms do you lose? And meanwhile, here's the thing. This has distracted us from the fact that there's a president of the United States right now who may very well declare war over Twitter. He can't do that. You have to go to Congress. You can't just spout off on Twitter and start a war. And he could do that. And all that I'm reading on Facebook right now, and just from social media in general, is football players are kneeling. The president's threatening thermonuclear war on Facebook and on Twitter. I think that's a little more important. And this isn't a left and right thing, because I wasn't a huge fan of George W. Bush, but he wasn't threatening thermonuclear war with Korea. And I know he didn't handle it right, and I agree Barack Obama didn't do it right, and I wasn't a huge fan of Obama with drones either, that he was just letting all these drones run amok in foreign countries and kill people who may or may not have been terrorists, and sometimes they weren't. So, no, nobody gets a blank canvas. Nobody gets, to do whatever they want. And the problem is, because nobody on the left's listening to the right, and nobody on the right's listening to the left, and I've talked about this before, because nobody's actually having a discussion. The people on the right that are trying to destroy healthcare in the States are allowed to do it. The people on the right that are trying to take away civil rights from people are allowed to do it. And a man in charge, who I don't think he colluded with the Russians, but I think he knew about it. I think he wanted to make sure he had deniability when he became president, so that, if anybody else had to fall, they could fall, but he'd keep his job. But again, because there's no rational discussion, it's just left and right. There's no one in the middle, or anybody who's in the middle gets told they're wishy-washy. As soon as a Republican sits down with a Democrat, both sides are labeled as traitors. This is absolutely ridiculous. There are far more important things in this world. And people have the right to protest. At the heart of all this, you have the right to say something is wrong. Because if you don't have a right to say something is wrong in a country, and if you want to say this country's just great and everything's perfect, then odds are you're pretty well off, and you've probably had a more decent run of it than some of these people who are not doing so well, who maybe live in a bad neighborhood. They can't go out at night. And when they do, they not only have to worry about potentially getting shot by people in their own neighborhood, but they also have to worry about the police coming along and their fear of getting shot. And there are enough headlines and there are enough instances that would be a very realistic fear in those neighborhoods. And speaking up and saying this is wrong has apparently become wrong. And that, in and of itself, bothers me enough to do this video before I go to bed late at night. And again, I'm going to disable comments because I know how the comment section gets with this crap. It drives me nuts. You're not allowed to have a voice on this that is neither liberal nor conservative, that is just basically, wait a minute, can we all look at what the actual root issue is here? Can we not make this some partisan bullshit and just actually have a logical, rational discussion? At some point that has to take over, doesn't it? This is normally where I'd say let me know what you guys think in the comments below, but I know better. It's just I needed to get this out and speak, because I'm watching as this partisan bickering has grown worse and worse and worse, and nobody's listening to anybody else anymore. Everybody's just going off on these tangents. Everybody's talking like they know everything about the other side, and liberals don't know everything about conservatives. Conservatives don't know everything about liberals, and the ones that are in between are watching as everything just gets torn apart. And at some point, I hope somebody somewhere is able to come forward and scream for it to stop and to bring about sanity, and that sanity takes hold, because it is absolutely ridiculous, and it's not just an American thing. I know this kind of thing is getting to a boil in certain European countries, that there's a nationalist spirit in certain European countries as well, and I've seen it in Canada. I haven't seen it to that same extent, but it's there. And there is inherent racism in almost any system. It's in Canada, it's in the States, it's everywhere. And the other part that's dangerous of this is not only the you can't protest, but the racism doesn't exist anymore, which seems to be the narrative on. Liberals seem to want racism to just stop because they say it's bad, and that's not the way it works. And there's some on the conservative side that say, well, no, racism really doesn't exist anymore like it used to. Both sides are wrong. And demonizing a person for being racist is wrong, as well as embracing racists is wrong. There is a there's racism everywhere, and that denial of that racism and that shunning of racism, those two things combine, and they've made things really, really ugly. Because a person not trusting another race doesn't make that person a horrible person. It means that they're either scared, uneducated, or they've been raised that way. And so that's a whole other conversation that's not being had either, because everybody's so busy yelling at each other, which is why there won't be comments on this video, but it needed to be posted. So thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and let's hope sanity prevails at some point soon. Soon? Maybe? No? Well, I said my piece. Thanks for watching.